So, this edition of AEW Dynamite started off with Jon Moxley and Eddie Kingston walking out, and they were attacked by 2.0 and Daniel Garcia. And then 2.0 and Garcia called out Sting and Darby Allin for their Texas Tornado tag team match. And I thought this was pretty cool that Sting was wrestling on TNT for the first time in 20 years. And there was one point in the match where Sting took a powerbomb, and I got legitimately nervous based on, but Sting just completely no-sold it and then hit a double Scorpion Death Drop and then locked both members of 2.0 in the Scorpion Deathlock for the win. And then they showed off what happened earlier in the night with Sammy Guevara proposing to his girlfriend. And while I'm really happy for him, I just can't help but be nervous about their future because, if you look at the history. But anyways, this transitioned to a match with Sammy Guevara facing off against Shawn Spears, and I'm honestly starting to get really tired of this match because I feel like I've seen it a million times. I get that we might still be doing this Pinnacle versus Inner Circle thing, but the amount of times that I've seen the mid-card members of these two factions facing off against each other is starting to get a bit excessive. But either way, since we were in Sammy's hometown of Houston, Texas, and he just successfully proposed to his girlfriend, obviously he couldn't lose this match, and he hit Spears with the GTH for the win. And then Tony Schiavone was backstage and interviewed the Impact World Champion Christian Cage, and Don Callis interrupted the interview and started patronizing Christian. And I started thinking about this, but I think it would have been cool if Don Callis kept his role as Executive Vice President of Impact Wrestling, because then he could just make the Impact World Champion Christian's life a living hell. And he could essentially wear him out before his match with Kenny Omega for the AEW World title at All Out. I think that would have been a pretty cool idea. But yeah, they go back and forth, and Christian says he's going to take Kenny's AEW World title from him too, and that Don Callis is always going to be a carny piece of shit. And then American Top Team's Dan Lambert was in the ring with Tony Schiavone, and Dan Lambert did this hilarious promo on cancel culture and millennials, and then he challenged anybody from the locker room to come out. And of course, Lance Archer answered the call, but Ethan Page and Scorpio Sky ambushed Archer before he could make it to the ring, so Archer is probably going to have a feud with the two of them. And then we had an AEW World Tag Team Championship match between the champions, the Young Bucks and Jurassic Express, and unsurprisingly, the match ended again with an interference on behalf of the Elite. And if you've seen my reviews over the past few weeks, you know how I feel about interferences and how I'm honestly just so sick of them being in every single match because I honestly hate screwy finishes. But the Young Bucks capitalized on Omega causing the distraction and hit the BTE trigger on Jungle Boy, and Matt Jackson pinned him for the win. And then after the match, Kenny Omega hit the One-Winged Angel on Christian Cage to build momentum for their AEW World title match at All Out. And then Tony Schiavone was backstage and interviewed AEW Women's World Champion Britt Baker. Sometimes I seriously feel like this is all she does week to week. But after the debut episode of Rampage, Britt introduced her friend Jamie Hayter, and Hayter challenged Red Velvet to step into the ring with her next week on Dynamite. And then Tony Schiavone did a segment with Paul White and basically thanked him for what he did last week, saving him and his son from the Nightmare Factory. But then QT and the Factory came out and tried to embarrass Paul White, but Paul said that at All Out, he's going to have a match one-on-one with QT Marshall. So I guess he really is stepping back into the ring, which I'm actually pretty interested in seeing. And then Tony Schiavone did a backstage segment with the Elite, and he said that Tony Khan had had enough of the Elite's interferences in matches, which I'm totally with him on that. So to combat this, he booked a tag team eliminator tournament with Private Party, Varsity Blondes, Lucha Brothers, and Jurassic Express, and the winner of that will get the AEW World Tag Team title match against the Young Bucks at All Out inside a steel cage. And then Taz was in the ring with his son Hook, and Taz introduced the FTW World Champion Ricky Starks, and they tried to make a statement on Brian Cage by having Will Hobbs lay him out backstage, but Brian Cage started fighting back, and Team Taz had to return backstage to help Hobbs. And then Penelope Ford took on Thunder Rosa, and you know the rule when we're in somebody's hometown is that they can't lose. So being in Texas, hometown hero Thunder Rosa obviously had to win, and she won with a very unique looking submission. And I think she also won not just because we're in her hometown, but because they're trying to build her up to being one of the top ranked women so that she could face AEW Women's World Champion Britt Baker at some point and rekindle their rivalry from earlier. And then Tony Schiavone was backstage with Arn Anderson and his son Brock Anderson. And they basically said that next week on Dynamite, Brock Anderson would try to avenge what happened to his father by taking on Tommy End. And even Arn Anderson said that Tommy End would hurt him, but Brock Anderson didn't care and said that he wasn't asking for his dad's permission and that he was going to be facing Tommy End anyways. And then in the main event, we had the conclusion to the 5 Labors of Jericho, where Chris Jericho took on MJF. And the stipulation was everything Judas was banned. And there was a really cool organic moment where Chris Jericho came out to complete silence because obviously he couldn't come out to his theme song, Judas. But the crowd just sang the entire song in unison to him, which was honestly a super cool moment. And I honestly did not think it would go as well as it did, but it actually sounded pretty good. And the whole crowd actually sounded like they were in time with each other. And they had a really competitive, good match, and I thought for sure Jericho had to win because after all, he went through all these weeks of hell, and it just didn't seem like it would make much sense if he couldn't finish the job. But I guess this company is trying to set up the future of the wrestling industry and decided to give MJF the rub by having him beat Jericho by submitting him with the Salt of the Earth armbar. So in the end, it kind of felt anticlimactic for Jericho to go through all that just to lose at the end against the opponent he was trying to face in the first place, but we'll see where Jericho's career goes from here because he's honestly pushing 50 now, and I don't think he has a whole lot of years left in his wrestling career. And I think AEW realizes that, and they're trying to slowly wean the audience off of Chris Jericho. But I'm hoping that this isn't the complete end for Jericho, and we do get to see him in the ring a few more times and in the wrestling industry in some capacity.